Just like with your muscles, if you want a faith that is strong, growing, and capable of carrying you through difficult situations that you may face in the future, you're going to need to stretch your faith. Imagine right now in your body, if all you could do is reach down to your knees. That's okay. But if you ever want to stretch all the way down to your toes, eventually you're going to need to start a new habit, something like reaching just a little bit farther each and every day. And it may not seem like that's going to do very much, but it will make a difference. When it comes to our faith, the same thing is true. God doesn't ask us to start off with superhuman faith flexibility. Instead, God asks us to just start stretching a little more each and every day and trust Him that transformation will happen. Last week, we talked about the first steps in stretching our faith, and we talked about how it's important to make a commitment and stick to it. Today, we're going to see a second way that we can stretch our faith so that God can help us grow. Last week, we also talked about a guy named Paul, and his before and after transformation is pretty amazing. Before Paul met Jesus, he was one of the biggest enemies of the early followers of Jesus. He attacked, imprisoned, and even killed Christians. But after Paul met Jesus, he became one of the most influential leaders in the entire Jesus movement. If you remember from last week, Paul wrote a letter to Christians in the city of Rome, and we call this the book of Romans. In the book of Romans, he wrote about how being in relationship with Jesus doesn't just impact our afterlife and our eternities, but it impacts our everyday lives as well. We're going to look at Romans chapter 12, verses 1 through 2. There, Paul writes this: "Therefore, I exhort you, brothers and sisters, by the mercies of God, to present your bodies as a sacrifice, alive, holy, and pleasing to God, which is your reasonable service. Do not be conformed to the present world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, so that you may test and approve what the will of God is, what is good and well-pleasing and perfect." See, what he tells us there is that it's all about transformation. Here at Castle Hills Christian Church, we like to say that we believe in changed lives through Christ. In other words, God can change and transform you from the inside out. Following Jesus isn't just a prayer we say one time and forget about. Following Jesus isn't just about showing up to church. It's about being totally transformed. Paul said we shouldn't look or act like everyone else because God is changing who we are. And only God can transform us in this kind of way. But there are some things that we can do to make it easier for God to begin to change us and transform who we are. A couple years ago, I decided that I really needed to get better sleep. I was staying up way too late. In the morning, I was having a hard time getting out of bed. And then when I was in bed, I wasn't really sleeping very well. I knew that something needed to change. So I began to turn off my electronic devices and go to bed a little early and really focus on getting good quality sleep. I knew that if I could get my sleep schedule in order, it would help with my health, but it would also give me an opportunity in the mornings before everyone else in the house got up to really center my mind and refocus on things that were important and spend some time with God. When I started these new habits, it was hard to train my brain and my body to behave in new ways, but over time, things started to change. My new habits not only got easier, but God began to transform me in brand new ways, some that even surprised me. I learned through that while God is the only one who can transform me and change me, I still have a role to play in my own transformation. If I want to grow in my faith, I need to kickstart the transformation by starting a new habit or discipline. Paul wanted his fellow Jesus followers to be transformed by God. But what exactly does that look like? What should our lives be like when we're being transformed by God? Well, if we go down just a little bit farther in Romans chapter 12, picking up in verse 9, this is what Paul wrote. "Love must be without hypocrisy. Hate what is evil, cling to what is good. Be devoted to one another in mutual love, showing eagerness in honoring one another. Do not lag in zeal, be enthusiastic in spirit, serve the Lord. Rejoice in hope, endure in suffering, persist in prayer. Contribute to the needs of the saints, pursue hospitality. Bless those who persecute you, bless and do not curse. Rejoice with those who rejoice, and weep with those who weep." See, Paul gives us a lot of things to think about here, but let me just pull out a few highlights for you. A person who is being transformed by God should do these three things. First, they should serve. You figure out how God has gifted you, how God's designed and wired you, and then you use those gifts to take care of other people. Second, we should love. You put other people before yourself, even those who are sometimes a little more difficult to love, and you make sure that they know that they matter, not just to you, but to God. And the third thing is to share. You celebrate with people on the good days, and you cry with them on the bad days. You share through all the ups and downs of life. We typically think of habits like reading the Bible and praying or going to church being able to kickstart our spiritual transformation, but choosing to serve, love, and share with others are also habits that can kickstart our own transformation. Paul knew that turning our faith into action would stretch our faith in some new ways. Every week during this series, I'm going to ask you to make one of 5 stretch commitments. So this week, which stretch commitment will you be doing? The first commitment is to show up. To start, maybe you'll just commit to showing up next week, and that may be a big stretch for you, or a couple weeks. And showing up means you're going to listen, you're going to discuss, and consider how God might want your faith to be stretched. The second commitment you can make is to follow Jesus. If you've never made a commitment to follow Jesus, today might be a great day for you to start that relationship. The third stretch commitment you could consider is to love God. Maybe you already kind of love God, and you're pretty committed to following Jesus, but you really need to grow deeper in that relationship, spend more time with God, and push away some of the struggles that you're having. You can commit to starting a new habit that helps you connect more deeply and regularly with God. The fourth commitment you can make is to love others. Maybe your relationship with God is not really your problem, but you're really struggling to love other people well. Maybe you need to add to your faith by starting a habit that will help you love other people around you. The fifth habit or fifth commitment you can make is to ask questions. If you're not ready for any of these other commitments right now, that's completely okay. We're all at different places in our faith journey. But if you have questions or doubts, I want you to know that this is a safe place for you to have those questions and wrestle with them. And you may not always find the answers you're looking for, but there might be something new for you to discover. Only God can transform you, but you can kickstart the transformation by starting a new habit. Whether your new habit is loving God or loving others or both, I hope you know that these small changes you make today can have a long impact on your life. You can stretch your faith by starting something new.